Hello, and thank you for finding my channel. It's a brand new channel. It's going to be exciting. We're going to be sharing all kinds of spiritual encounter and ghost stories. Send them in if you got them. These are some that I thought you might like. Enjoy. I guess my earliest memory of something strange happening was I was in probably junior high, maybe high school, early high school. I was in class, and the bell was going to ring for us to go to lunch. And I remember my stomach being in knots. And I just kept getting a feeling stronger and stronger that something wasn't right. Something was really terribly wrong. Almost like a feeling of doom. And I couldn't shake it. The bell rang. We went to lunch. I got my tray and I tried to get it out of my head, but my stomach was in knots. I could not eat. I might have had a bite or two and that's it. I couldn't eat. I just couldn't kick the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Well, the next two classes were pretty hard to get through. I finally got out of school, went home, and by the time I got home, I was crying. And I told my mom, I don't know what's wrong. Something's wrong. It's really bad. And I was afraid something had happened to my dad. And I told Mom my stomach was in knots. I couldn't eat. She said, well, do you feel bad other ways? And I said, no. I'm not sick. This is something that is going to happen or has happened. It's really a bad feeling. I'm afraid maybe Daddy got hurt at work. And the reason I thought it was my dad was because he used to climb poles. He worked for the telephone company. And I remembered Mom saying once that his job was really dangerous. So she said, well, you know I've been home all day. If something would have happened to your dad, they would have come told me. And she said, you know, your grandma in Denison, we just saw her last weekend. She's doing good. She'd had hip surgery, but was about to go home and, you know, it was doing fine. And my grandpa was a fireman, and he was there taking care of her. Like every day at the hospital, doing, you know, hanging out with her and doing what she needed done, walking with her. And she was doing great when we saw her the weekend before. And she said, well, my mom said, after your dad comes home, we'll go up and go to the payphone and call your grandma. No, we didn't have a phone in our house. Even though my dad worked for the telephone company, we didn't have a phone yet. So I was so glad to see Dad pull up. When he pulled up, I knew he was okay. So the only one left was my grandma in West Texas. So Mom and I went to the grocery store, used the payphone out front, and we called my grandmother in Memphis. My grandma in Memphis was in her late 70s. She lived alone, but she had close neighbors all around her that were like family. And so we called her and she answered. She was canning with one of the neighbor ladies, canning some vegetables from the garden. Everything was fine. I even got to talk to her for a few minutes, so I know everything was fine with her. But I still had that feeling. Maybe it wasn't as strong as it was earlier in the day, but it was still there. And Mom said, well, let's go home and fix supper. Maybe you'll feel better later or you can eat. And so we went home, fixed supper. I may have eaten a bite or two, I'm not sure, but my stomach was still in knots. And after supper, we put everything away and sit down to watch TV, and there was a knock at the door. It was my dad's cousins. And Mom and Dad went to the door, and I followed them. And my dad's cousins said, "I'm sorry to tell you, but Dorothy died today." And my dad says, "Oh, heck, what happened?" And they said, "Well, your dad was feeding her lunch. And they said she had a massive heart attack and died right there in the hospital bed." Whenever they said that, my mom spun around, looked at me straight in the eye, and I swear I felt like ice water was going through my veins. I felt like I had done something wrong, but I knew better. I was just a kid. I hadn't done anything. I just sensed something was really, really wrong. I never understood that look she gave me. For many, many years, I always thought about that. Fast forward about 30 years. Mom's not doing well. She's had health issues and a serious fall where she broke her neck and kidney problems, and we know she's not going to be around much longer. Dad had died the year before, and her and I were just talking about life and everything. And we were talking about things that happened years ago and just talking. And I said, "Mom, do you remember that day I came home from school and was upset, my stomach was in knots, and I thought something bad was going to happen to Dad, or had happened?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you remember whenever they came and told us that Grandma Dorothy had died? You spun around and you looked at me." She said, "Yeah, I do." I said, "You remember that look?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "Why did you look at me that way?" And she said, "Because I realized you had it too." I said, "I had it too? Oh, what is that supposed to mean?" And she says, "Well, I don't know if I ever told you, but when I was pregnant with your brother, long before you were even thought about," she said, "we lived in Memphis. We were newlyweds. We would drive to Crum and then to Denison to visit his family, your dad's family, and look for property." And she said, "We were on 287, somewhere between Quanah and Memphis. And we were just tootling down the road. We'd done this several dozen times since we got married." And she said, "A car flew by us." And she said, "As soon as I glanced over and saw him go by us, I had a flash in my mind of him crashing." And she said, she told me, "I told your dad he better slow down. He's rushing to his death." Mom said about 10 or 15 minutes later, they topped a hill, and sure enough, he had wrecked out. And there was a car that had stopped and was checking on him. And the guy took his hat off and shook his head to my dad whenever Dad slowed down to drive by. So they knew he had died. Mom said throughout the years that those kind of things have happened. Couldn't really tell anybody. Didn't really know how. She said, I thought it was just me. She said, but when that happened with you, I knew you had it too. Well, that's it for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it gave you something to think about. If you've got a story, send it to the email address provided, and keep listening. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and if you liked it, hit like. This is a brand new channel, and you can help us make it grow. Send in your stories. Bye. Be safe out there.